What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So glad y'all are able to join me on this fine evening. Excuse me. Anyway, I have a few things I want to talk to you guys about before we get started. First off, if you guys haven't noticed, my hair is now purple. I got it done yesterday by one of my lovely co-workers at Ulta Beauty. Make sure to go check them out at the salon. You can book an appointment at ulta.com or on our app. Go check them out. They're absolutely amazing. Second off, I started reading this book that I want to tell you guys a little bit about. It is called American Serial Killers, The Epidemic Years, 1950 to 2000 by Peter Frosky, and it's available at Barnes & Noble. If you guys would like to read it, it is very, very good. As you guys can tell, it's already well loved. I've got important information highlighted. I've got notes in the columns, and I'm using this as my resource for future videos and stuff. Definitely go check it out. It is $20 at Barnes & Noble. That's where I got my copy. And yeah, absolutely love it. Definitely go check that out. And I hope you guys love it just as much as I do. Today's video is about someone very special in serial killer world, I guess. Because he has three very popular movies based upon him. And if you don't know who I'm talking about, we are talking about Ed Gein. And I'm super excited to discuss him because he's got a lot of creepy stuff to talk about. He's also very well known, and I am super excited to see the discussion in the comments section. Make sure to blow it up because I love hearing from you guys. And let's get to it. As normal, my sources and socials are in the description. So yeah, let's get into it. So basically, let's start with this. If you do not know, Ed Gein is the basis for Norman Bates from the classic horror movie Psycho. So yeah. He's also known as the Plainfield Ghoul. He is known for homicide, necrophilia. He's had 2+ victims. The date of his murders are December 8th, 1954 and November 16th, 1957. So in between those 2 days. He was arrested on November 17th, 1957. He was born August 27th, 1906. So his birthday's coming up pretty soon, I guess. Woo! He has, as far as we know, he has 2 victims. Mary Hogan, she was 54 at the time of her death. She was a tavern owner. And Bernie C. Warden, who was a hardware store owner and was 58 at the time of his death. The weapon he used was a .22 caliber rifle. And he was, this happened in Plainfield, Wisconsin in the United States. He was sentenced to life in prison in 1968, found not guilty by reason of insanity and acquitted. He was transferred to a mental hospital and died on June 26th, 1984. So way before my time. Way before this. His full name is Edward Theodore Gein, was born in 1906 and died in 1984, was an American murderer and body snatcher. So he robbed graves and stuff, which is really weird in my opinion. His crimes, which he committed around his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin, garnered widespread notoriety after authorities had discovered Gein had exhumed corpses from local graveyards and fashioned trophies and keepsakes from their bones and skin. Sound like anybody else? According to rumors that Ed Gein was also based, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was based upon Ed Gein for this reason. After police found body parts in his house in 1957, Gein confessed to killing 2 women, tavern owner Mary Hogan in 1954, and a Plainfield hardware store owner, Bernice Warden, in 1957. Initially found unfit to stand trial following confinement in a mental health facility, he was tried in 1968 for the murder of Warden and sentenced to life imprisonment. which he spent in a mental hospital. The body of Bernice Worden was found in Gein's shed. Her head and Mary Hogan's head were found inside his house. So he them and took their heads and kept them in his house. Ugh. Even on my thing, that's disgusting. Alright. Robert H. Goldmeyer, the judge in the Gein case, wrote, due to prohibited costs, Gein was tried for only one murder, that of Mrs. Worden. With fewer than 3 murders attributed, Gein does not meet the traditional definition of a serial killer. Regardless, his real-life case influenced the creation of several fictional serial killers, including Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Norman Bates from Psycho, and Buffalo Bill from The Silence of the Lambs. So, since we're kind of talking about that, I'm going to find the definition according to Mr. Roski and kind of tell you why Gein does not meet the traditional definition of a serial killer. So I have to find that first. Probably should have found that beforehand, but you know me. Okay. Where is it at? Where is it at?
And where?
Okay, hold on. I'll get back to you guys when I find it. So, I found it. Took me a little bit of searching. According to Peter Roski on page 10 of his book, American Serial Killers, he says the defined serial murder as the lawful unkilling of 2 or more victims by the same offenders in separate events for any reason. In the past, a serial killer has been traditionally defined as somebody who murders 3 or more victims in separate sexual fantasy-driven murders with a cooling-off period in between. So, at the time of Ed Gein, he did not fit the traditional definition of a serial killer because he only murdered 2 victims, not 3 or more. But in my mind, he's still a serial killer because he killed people anyway. In my mind, my definition of a serial killer is someone who murders anyone, more than one person. So, mass murderers, like mass shooters, are serial killers, in my mind. Anyway, Gein's childhood started in La Crosse County, Wisconsin, when he was born to his parents, George and Augusta Gein, both natives of Wisconsin. And they had 2 sons, Henry George and his younger brother Edward Theodore Gein. Despite Augusta's deep contempt for Hunter, the marriage persisted because of the family's religious beliefs about divorce. Augusta Gein operated a small grocery store and eventually purchased a farm on the outskirts of the small town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, which then became the Gein family's permanent home. She moved to this location to prevent outsiders from influencing her son. Edward Gein left the premises only to go to school. Besides school, he spent most of his time doing chores on the farm. Augusta Gein, a fervent Lutheran, preached to her boys the innate immortality of the world, the evil of drinking, and the belief that all women, herself excluded, were prostitutes and instruments of the devil. Damn, I would not want to live with this woman. She reserved time every afternoon to read to them from the Bible, usually selecting graphic verses from the Old Testament dealing with death, murder, and divine retribution. With an effeminate demeanor, the younger Gein became a target for bullies. Classmates and teachers recalled off-putting mannerisms such as seemingly random laughter as if he were laughing at his own personal jokes. To make matters worse, his mother scolded him whenever he tried to make friends. Despite his poor social development, he did fairly well in school, particularly in reading. So, he was smart. I mean, I guess, yeah, he's smart. Gein tried to make his mother happy, but she was rarely pleased with her boys, often abusing them, believing that they were destined to become failures like their father. During their teens and throughout their early adulthood, the boys remained detached from people outside of their farmsteads, so they only had each other for company. So like the death of his family members. George Gein, who was Ed's father, died of a heart attack in 1940. The Gein brothers began working odd jobs to help with expenses. Both brothers were considered reliable and honest residents of the community. While both worked as handymen, Ed also frequently babysat for neighbors. He enjoyed babysitting, seeming to relate more easily to the children than adults. Henry Gein began to reject his mother's view of the world and was worried about his brother Ed's attachment to her. He spoke ill of her around his brother. On May 16, 1944, a brush fire burned close to the farm, and the Gein brothers went to extinguish it. Reportedly, the brothers were separated, and as night fell, Ed Gein lost sight of his brother. When the fire was extinguished, he reported to police that his brother was missing. When a search party was organized, Gein led them directly to his brother, who lay dead on the ground. The police had concerns under the circumstances which the body was discovered. The ground on which Henry Gein lay on was untouched by fire, and he had bruises on his head. Despite this, the police dismissed the possibility of foul play, and the county coroner listed asphyxiation as the cause of the death. Although some investigators suspected that Ed Gein killed his brother, no charges were filed against him. Okay, kind of talking about that. Personally, what I think happened, from what I could find, I think Ed did kill his brother. As it said, he did talk ill about his mother, and Ed had an attachment to her. So, I think he got fed up with it, and when the fire happened, he took this as an opportunity to murder his brother. But y'all leave your theories for Henry Gein's death down below. I want to hear about them. So moving on, after his brother's death, Ed lived alone with his mother, who died on December 29th, 1945, following a series of strokes, at which time Gein lost his only friend and one true love. He was absolutely alone in the world. Whew, I cannot imagine. No, ma'am. No, sir. Cannot imagine that. Like, his dad died, his brother died, his mom died, and now he's alone in the world because he was isolated. He remained on the farm, supporting himself with earnings from odd jobs. He boarded up rooms used by his mother, including the upstairs, downstairs parlor, and living room, leaving them untouched. He lived in a small room next to the kitchen, and Gein became interested in reading death cult magazines and adventure stories. His arrest happened on November 16th, 1957. On November 16th, 1957, Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Worden disappeared, and police had reason to suspect Ed. Warden's son had told investigators that Ed had been in the store the evening before the disappearance, saying he would return the following morning for a gallon of antifreeze. A sales slip for a gallon of antifreeze was the last receipt written by Warden on the morning she disappeared. Upon searching his property, investigators discovered Warden's decapitated body in a shed, hung upside down by ropes at her wrists with a crossbar at her ankles. The torso was dressed out like that of a deer, and she had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and the mutilations were performed after her death. Searching the house, authorities found 4 noses, whole human bones and fragments, 9 masks of human skin, bowls made from human skulls, 10 female heads with the tops sawed off, human skin covering several chair seats, Mary Hogan's head in a paper bag, Bernice Warden's head in a burlap sack, 9 uvulas in a shoebox, skulls on his bedpost, organs in the refrigerator, and a pair of lips on a drawstring for a window shade. And then a belt made from human female nipples. And I can see for a reason why he went into a mental institution. This guy was just fucked up in the head. For good reason. That's just weird. I'm sorry. Like, even on a level like that, for me, it's just freaky. Out there. Do I know you? And then a lampshade made from the skin from a human face. So, like, what I'm assuming is, I guess, when he broke into the graves, he, like, cut the face off, the skin off the face, and then made a lampshade from it. When questioned, Gein told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies while he was in a trance-like state. On about 30 of those visits, he said he had come out of the days while in the cemetery, left the grave in good order, and returned home empty-handed. On the other occasions, he dug up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women he thought resembled his mother and took the bodies home, where he tanned their skins to make his paraphernalia. Gein admitted to robbing 9 graves, leading investigators to their locations. Because authorities were uncertain as to whether the slight Gein was capable of single-handedly digging up a grave in a single evening, they exhumed 2 of the graves and found them empty, thus corroborating Gein's confession. Shortly after his mother's death, Gein had decided he wanted a sex change and began to create a woman's suit so he could pretend to be a female. Gein's practice of donning the tan skins of women was described as an insane transvestite ritual. Oh gosh, I hope I don't get demonetized for saying that, but yeah. Gein denied having sex with the bodies he had exhumed, explaining they smelled too bad. During interrogation, Gein also admitted to the shooting of Mary Hogan, a tavern operator who had been missing since 1954. A 16-year-old youth whose parents were friends of Gein and attended ball games and movies with Gein reported that he was aware of the shrunken heads which Gein had described as relics from the Philippines sent by a cousin who had served in World War II. Upon investigation by the police, these were determined to be human facial skins carefully peeled off from cadavers and used as masks by Gein. Warusha County Sheriff Art Skelly allegedly physically assaulted Gein during questioning by banging Gein's head and face into a brick wall, causing Gein's initial confession to be ruled as inadmissible. Skelly died of a heart attack in December 1968 at the age of 43, only a month after testifying at Gein's trial. Many who knew him said he was traumatized by the horror of Gein's crimes, and that this, along with the fear of having to testify, especially about assaulting Gein, led to his early death. One of his friends said he was a victim of Ed Gein as surely as if he had butchered him. Whew. Jesus. God damn, I would know. His trial began on November 21st, 1957, when he was arraigned on one count of first-degree murder in Warusha County Court, where he entered a plea of not guilty by the reason of insanity. He was found mentally incompetent and thus unfit to stand trial. He was sent to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, now known as the Dodge Correctional Institution, a maximum security facility in Waupun, Wisconsin, and was later transferred to the Minolta State Hospital in Madison, Wisconsin. In 1968, Gein's doctor determined that he was sane enough to stand trial, and the trial began on November 14th, 1968, lasting 1 week. He was found guilty on the count of first-degree murder by Judge Robert H. Gallmar, but because he was found to be legally insane, he spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital. Like, oh my god. Yeah, I can see why this guy was considered insane. God damn. I can't even imagine. Like, just reading this. I have, like, my notes right here. So, like, talking about this freaks me out. Because of the fact that this is just terrifying. Well, on March 20th, 1958, while he was in detention, his house burned to the ground. Arson was suspected. When Gein learned of the incident, he shrugged and said just as well. In 1958, his car, which had been used to haul the bodies of his victims, was sold at a public auction for $716, $5,718 when counting for inflation, to a carnival sideshow operator, Bunny Gibbons. Gibbons later charged the carnival goers 25 cents to see it. On July 26, 1984, Gein died of respiratory and heart failure due to cancer in Goodland Hall at the Mendota Mental Health Institute. His grave site in the Plainfield Cemetery was frequently vandalized over the years. Souvenir seekers chipped off pieces of his gravestone before the bulk of it was stolen in 2000. The gravestone was recovered in June 2001 near Seattle and is now in a museum in Volusia County. Ed's impact to popular culture. The story of Ed Gein has a lasting impact on popular culture as evidenced by its numerous appearances in movies, music, and literature. Gein's story was adapted into a number of movies, including Deranged in 1974, In the Light of a Moon 2000, later retitled as Ed Gein for the U.S. market, and Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainfield 2007. Gein influenced the nature of the book and film characters, most notably such as fictional characters, the fictional serial killers as Norman Bates in Psycho, Leatherface, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, and Buffalo Bill, the Silence of the Lambs. At the time, the news reports of Gein's crimes spawned a subgenre of black humor. Since the 1950s, Gein had frequently been exploited in transgressive art or shock rock, often with no connection to his life or crimes beyond shock value of his name. A biological musical titled Ed Gein the Musical premiered on January 2nd, 2010 in Manisha, Wisconsin. Oh my god. They made a musical about this sick motherfucker. A fucking musical. What the fuck? I did not know that. Oh my god. No. It's bad enough that 3 of the most popular horror movies were based off of him. But now they made a musical about it? Oh, Jesus. No. Oh my goodness. So, basically this next little piece of article talks about, like, when they found the body and stuff. So, a sheriff from the nearby town of Plainsfield was investigating the disappearance of 58-year-old shopkeeper Bernice Warden. Evidence from her store, a receipt found on the floor near a trail of blood, and a missing cash till had led him to this farmhouse, which belonged to Ed Gein. At this time, he was 51 years old, was not in, but Sheriff Shelley had a warrant to search the premises, and he decided to walk through the property. As he was walking through the trash in a darkened kitchen, he brushed against something hanging from the ceiling. So this guy literally, like, was walking, brushes against this dead body. Literally, this dead body. Yeah, imagine how traumatizing that would be. You're just walking in a darkened kitchen and boom, you run into a dead body. Literally. Like, it was hanging from the ceiling. So he turned and he, like, took his torch and he, like, shines it towards the object. It was a naked human carcass, beheaded, disemboweled, and hanging from a ceiling beam. He gagged at the sight, but managed to avoid throwing up. The carcass turned out to be the remains of Mrs. Warden, and police found her head in a burlap sack in another part of his house. So, like, he literally treated this woman like she was a deer. Like, literally hung her from the ceiling and gutted her like she was a fucking deer. Like, oh, God, it just makes me sick. Like, that's such... It's one thing to kill someone, but to hang them from your ceiling and disembowel them and gut them like they're a deer is a whole nother level of fucking crazy. Nails had been hammered through each ear and tied together with twine as if readiness for the head to be hung up as a trophy. Detectives spent the entire night and next day trawling through the house. What they found marked a horrific new low in the annals of American crime. He had been using body parts to fashion a series of ghoulish artifacts. A belt had been studded with nipples, a soup bowl had been created out of the top of a skull, and lampshades and chairs had been fashioned out of human skin. Police found a box full of noses, a curtain pole with a pair of woman's lips sewed into it. A shoebox under the closet containing a dried female genitalia. And hanging up in the closet was a shirt made of human skin. On the wall were the faces of 9 women, carefully preserved and mounted like the bizarre collection of a human hunter. This man had some serious explaining to do. When he was arrested, he initially denied everything, but eventually cracked. He admitted to killing Mrs. Warden. He was shot in the head with a .22 caliber rifle and then dragged outside to his car and transported back to the farmhouse. Later, he also confessed to the murder of Plainsfield innkeeper Mary Hogan, who had vanished in mysterious circumstances 3 years earlier. But he said most of the body parts had actually been taken from corpses of women he had dug up in the local cemetery. They were unsure if he was telling the truth on this and thought he may be responsible for 4 other murders in central Wisconsin, dating back to 1947. Yeah, I'm gonna, skip this because this is disgusting. I kind of read through this, I skimmed through it, but, reading to you, this is gross. Then they kind of talk more about Henry's death. He was 7 years older than Edward. And then it talks about his mom. Basically saying she focused her life on Christianity. She dominated the family and drummed her sons to the innate immortality of the world and the twin dangers of alcohol and loose women, aka prostitutes. That's the nice way of calling women prostitutes. You know, all the weird stuff. Yeah, scrolling. Yeah, I'm kind of just going to end it there. So basically, Ed Gein was a gravedigger, and a lot of his things came from dead bodies, but he also did kill 2 people. He was initially found unfit for trial, but then later was found fit for trial, and he has 3 movies based upon it. Make sure to go check those out. Those are actually really good movies, and it'll see differently in light. Anyway, guys, bye. Thank you for sitting with me. We'll talk a little bit about his movies real quick before I say goodbye. I just gotta find that. Okay. Here we go. Scanning, there's a lot of evidence here. So basically kind of why he's so basically the only thing I really know is Psycho, because that's the only movie I have actually seen So Psycho is basically about a man, his name is Norman Bates, and he basically kills people, and at the end of the movie they find out that he's pretending to be his mother. And it's kind of where he comes from. He had this really weird attachment to his mom, and they basically kept her body. So he basically like kept her dead body in his house, but pretended to be her, like dressing up in her clothes and all of this, pretending to be a woman. And that's kind of where that comes from. The Leatherface is like all the clothes and stuff. Leatherface is known for wearing a face made of human leather, so like skin. So that's kind of how they're related to that. Anyway, I'm sorry for the shitty ending, you guys. Like, I tried to make sure that it's not too descriptive. Anyway, peace out. I love you.